All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending this Ichimoku Trading Strategies webinar. I am Charmaine Feria. I am known as Simple Trader at Bukaka. I have a blog called Pixiu Trades.wordpress.com, and I'm a moderator at Stock Market Pilipinas, and I've been charting for that group for the last 5 years. I've been trading the market for more than 10 years, so throughout my trading journey, I've tried many kinds of trading system. I tried Elliott Wave, simple technical indicators, Darvas boxes. All of these have their own benefits, but what I find the most effective for trend following among these systems is the Ichimoku trading strategy. So today we have the opportunity and privilege to talk about the Ichimoku Hyo system, its different elements, and how they come together to point you in the direction of profits. So are you a new trader who is looking for a good system to begin your trading journey? Or are you an experienced trader but would like to learn new ways of making money from the market? So today that opportunity is yours. The Ichimoku Hyo system is a tried and tested strategy that will leave you asking, why have you not learned this system before? Ichimoku Trading Strategies webinar is made for individuals who are interested in becoming more effective stock market traders. It discusses and applies the Ichimoku trading system that will guide the learner in finding trade setups that have a high probability of success. At the end of the course, the student will be able to find profitable trades using the Ichimoku trading system, determine the best possible price levels for entry and exit, maximize profits and minimize losses, and build confidence in trading decisions. What you will learn: the Ichimoku trading system, its components, and the effective utilization of tools for more profitable trades. Course outline. Part 1, we will talk about Ichimoku Hyo. Lesson 1, what is Ichimoku Hyo? Lesson 2, all about equilibrium. Part 2, elements of the Ichimoku system. Lesson 1, the Tankenson. Lesson 2, the Kijun-sen. Lesson 3, the Chico Span. Lesson 4, the Senku Span A. Lesson 5, the Senku Span B. And Lesson 6, the Kuhmo. Part 3, the Ichimoku Signals. Lesson 1, crossovers for entry and exit. Lesson 2, Kuhmo breakout trades. Lesson 3, Kuhmo twists. Part 4, trading strategies. Lesson 1, setting price targets. Lesson 2, trend following. Lesson 3, bounce plays. Lesson 4, multiple time frame analysis. Part 5, using Ichimoku with other tools. Lesson 1, using Ichimoku with technical indicators. Lesson 2, using Ichimoku with a Fibonacci ratio. Lesson 3, some trade examples. If you have technical problems or if there's any question that you'd like to ask me, you can just use the GoToWebinar box at the right side of your screen. And I'll try my best to answer your questions later. Alright, so let's talk about Ichimoku Hyo. What is Ichimoku Hyo? So Ichimoku is a trading system that was developed by a Japanese journalist named Goichi Hosoda. He spent 30 years perfecting the system and then released it to the public in 1968. He believed that the market action is a reflection of dynamic human behavior. This human behavior is based on the human being's tendency to move away and towards equilibrium in their lives. Diba? Most of the time, for example, we have the perfect life, we have a family, we have a pet dog, we have a nice house, we have a regular normal life, but sometimes we're trying to seek some adventure in this life. So we try to venture out into other things, go into businesses. This is sort of some equilibrium when we're trying to figure out things for ourselves. Then when we find that this is not for us, this kind of business is not for me, we try to tend to go back to the way things are. We try to restore equilibrium in our lives. We try out new things. If it fails, we go back to square one and do it all over again. So this is the same theory. We try to explore our options. Same way in the stock market, prices try to enter into territories that it had never entered. For example, it enters into all-time highs, all-time lows, and then later on it tries to restore equilibrium by going back to its average prices. So this theory of equilibrium is very much true for the stock market as it is for our regular lives. The Ichimoku Hyo system has been extensively used in Asian trading rooms. Now, it was used before specifically in Japan, and then the use mushroomed throughout other areas, Eastern European countries, North American countries, etc. It has been used successfully in forex, commodities, stocks, and other markets, but it did not become popular in the West until the 1990s. So it's only in the 20th century that Western traders have started to understand the power of Ichimoku. Here in the Philippines, its use had already been popularized, but it's not as popular as our use of other indicators as well. So Ichimoku is trend-based. Through its different elements, it defines supports and resistances, it identifies the direction of the trend, it assesses the momentum, and provides trading signals. So this is an example of an Ichimoku chart. From here, we can immediately see that this stock, Mega World, is on an uptrend. So it doesn't take you a long time to analyze. You know that it's on an uptrend, and it is supported by those red and blue lines. And that is the price level with which to enter. So Ichimoku Hyo gives you an immediate understanding of the sentiment based on where prices are in relation to the other Ichimoku elements. Ichimoku translates to one glance equilibrium chart. Ichimoku means glance, Kinko means equilibrium, and Hyo means chart. Ichimoku answers the following questions. First, what is the market sentiment? Is the market bullish or is it bearish? How about the momentum of the trend? Is the current momentum strong or is it weak? It also provides clues on the strength of the buy and sell signals. Are these signals weak, strong, or neutral? So the Ichimoku Hyo chart provides a clear picture of how prices relate to past, present, and future price action. This is the Chico Span. This is the green line. It reflects current price action moved back 26 periods. This is the Tankenson line, or the blue line. It compares current prices with respect to the equilibrium in the past 9 periods. This is the Kijun-sen line. It compares current price with the past 26 periods. The Kuhmo tells you the direction of prices in the future. So this makes Ichimoku the only indicator that is both lagging and leading at the same time. So let's move on to Equilibrium Lesson 2. The market is dictated by the law of supply and demand. When supply equals demand, it is in a state of equilibrium. But sometimes, demand is higher than the supply. So when this happens, price tends to shoot up because the sellers are less willing to let go of their shares, while buyers are willing to pay more to get hold of those same shares. When the market gets disrupted in this way, you get disequilibrium. So as price goes higher, there will be less willing buyers. Then there will be a surplus in supply. Price will have to fall in order to restore the balance or the equilibrium between supply and demand. When the price goes back down, the demand increases and the supply decreases once again as the market eats into the supply at lower prices. As a result, we have equilibrium all over again. In this chart, we see that prices have fallen in order to relieve the excess supply. As prices fall, the market will now tend to demand a higher quantity. The market falls again into a state of disequilibrium. Now, if that demand ends up higher than what the market is willing to sell, then we get a shortage in supply, and as a result, prices will rise. As price moves higher, the demand starts to decrease while the supply increases. Eventually, the market will find the level at which the supply equals demand in order to restore equilibrium. So the market goes back and forth between the state of equilibrium and disequilibrium. This is the backbone of the concept of Ichimoku Hyo. So an important aspect of Ichimoku is that it is based on a set of rules. You have to follow those rules so that you are able to trade based on a system. That discipline keeps you from being emotional about your trades. So many times we jump into and out of trades without any plan just because we see it in the ticker. Now, everyone's buying it, so you tend to follow and you tend to chase prices. In the end, you'd be left with a loss. You'd be left holding the bag because you had no rules. So if you have rules to follow, you would not have to fall prey to that kind of behavior. So as a trader, we must look into the most profitable trade with the highest rewards and the lowest risks. So we don't have to get into every single trade opportunity. We should discipline ourselves only to get into the more profitable ones. Therefore, you have to have the skills and the knowledge to find these profitable setups. So if there's anything that Ichimoku can do for you that will have a profound effect on your trading, it would be to eliminate doubt. By mastering the Ichimoku system, you are the master of the trade. You're able to look into the past, present, and future direction of the market. Ichimoku is a standalone system. It could be used without other tools. You don't really need to add anything else to the system. But if you're used to trading divergences, you're used to trading with indicators, you're used to trading with Fibonacci levels, you could use these systems along with Ichimoku to add conviction to your trades. Ichimoku does not only work in the stock market, you can use it in the commodities market, in the forex market, etc. You could also use it with different time frames. But we usually use the daily time frame and find target prices using higher time frames like the weekly and the monthly charts. The weekly and the monthly charts also tell us the bigger direction or the higher trend or the general trend. But for the entry and exit levels, we can use the daily chart. We could also use the 4-hour chart or the 1-hour chart to find out or anticipate changes during the daily trades, especially if you're a day trader. So part 2, what are the elements of the Ichimoku system? There are 6. The Tankenson, the Kijun-sen, the Chico Span, the Senko Span A, the Senko Span B, and the Kuhmo. The Tankenson is the blue line. This is called the conversion line or the turning line. It is calculated using the highest high plus the lowest low of the past 9 periods divided by 2. The Kijun-sen is the red line. It's also known as the reference line or the standard line or the baseline. It's calculated by taking the highest high plus the lowest low for the past 26 periods divided by 2. The Kijun-sen is a very important support and resistance level. The Chico Span is also known as the lagging line. It is the green line. It is the current price shifted 26 periods back. The Senko Span A is also known as the leading or the preceding line. To calculate the Senko Span A, take the Tankenson plus the Kijun-sen, add that, and then divide that by 2. And then plot that number 26 time periods ahead. The Senko Span B is also known as the leading span too. They're leading because they're always plotted ahead. So to calculate for the Senko Span B, get the highest high plus the lowest low. You add that, divide it by 2. This number is calculated over the past 52 time periods and plotted 26 periods ahead. So in a bullish Kuhmo, the Senko Span B is at the bottom and the Senko Span A is at the top. The Senko Span B is usually flat in consolidations that take a longer period of time. The Kuhmo is what you find in between the Senko Span A and B. Right, so that's a brief introduction on the different elements. Now let's discuss each one by one. The Tankenson is the midpoint of the past 9 periods. So we count 9 periods back. Then we add the highest high. This is the chart for IMI, and the highest high for the past 9 periods, this was as of September 30, 2017, was 1990, and the lowest low was 1688. So to get the Tankenson, we add 1990 plus 1688 and divide the sum by 2 to get 1839. That 1839 is plotted as a point in the Tankenson line, which is the blue line. So that blue line is made up of a series of averages over a period of time. The Tankenson tells you the short-term bias. If price is above the Tankenson, it is bullish. The Tankenson is the fastest of all the Ichimoku indicators. The Tankenson also shows you the strength of the short-term momentum. So the steeper the Tankenson line, the higher, the stronger the momentum. of the price. In this chart for IMI, we see that it is moderately sloped upward, showing moderate upward momentum. So at different periods of time, this may slope up. It can move sideways. When it consolidates, when it's time for security to consolidate, you would find that the Tankenson starts to flatten out. If it's on an uptrend, it is sloped upwards. If it is consolidating, it is moving sideways. This is a chart for Mega World. If the price is below the Tankenson, the momentum is weaker and the short-term bias is bearish. Note, we are only talking about the short-term bias because the Tankenson is only an average for the past 9 periods. So price may consolidate sideways for a while. In this sense, it is short-term bearish because it had stopped making higher highs and higher lows. It started to move sideways. But once the price goes above the Tankenson once again, then we have a resumption of the short-term trend, which is upward. So when price consolidates between the Tenkan and the Kijun, it is still bullish because it is still above the Kuhmo, but it has to rest for a while in order to consolidate its gains. The Kijun-sen is a vital part of the Ichimoku system. It is calculated as the midpoint of the past 26 periods. From the last day's candlestick, we count 26 periods back. Then we find the highest high. Here it is at 550. Then we get the lowest low, which is 482. We add these two values, then divide them by 2. So 550 plus 482 divided by 2 is 516. So that's the value plotted right here. So the trend is medium-term bullish because price is above the Kijun-sen line. So as discussed earlier, the Kijun-sen is a measure of price high and low for the past 26 periods and therefore is a good indicator of medium-term price momentum. If price is below the Kijun-sen, then the price is bearish. For WPI, the price had gone inside the Kuhmo, therefore we expect it to go sideways until it is able to break above the Kuhmo and get above the Tankenson line. While the trend is still considered technically upward because it had not broken below the Kuhmo, it is in danger of, it is getting more bearish because it had broken both the Tankenson and the Kijun-sen lines and also the Senko A line. So the last line of support for WPI is the Senko B line. If it breaks below that, then it's officially on a downtrend. When an uptrending stock consolidates and bounces off its Kijun-sen line, this means that the medium-term trend is still bullish. The encircled areas are good areas to buy into an uptrending market. Now, once price falls below the Kijun-sen, it becomes the medium-term resistance. The Kijun-sen is also a built-in trend line. In the first half of this chart, the Kijun-sen acted as price resistance. Price trended below the Kijun-sen. Then a reversal happened. The price crossed above the Kijun-sen. This was a bullish signal that resulted in an uptrend. The opposite happened in this chart. Price had been on an uptrend, trending above the Kijun-sen line. And then price started to break below the Kijun-sen. The result was a downtrend. So there was a change in rules. From a previous support, the Kijun-sen became a resistance. And the trend shifted from bullish to bearish. From the previous examples, we learned that the Kijun-sen could also serve as your trail stops for trending stocks, so that the break below the Kijun-sen or your trail stop is a sell signal. The advantage of using the Kijun-sen over trend lines is that the Kijun-sen line adjusts with market volatility. Unlike trend lines, you only draw a straight line from bottom to bottom. The Kijun-sen line actually follows prices so that it bends every time prices make a significant move. So it's a more efficient trend line than regular straight lines where you draw, connect the bottoms. So as a trail stop, you just hold while price is above the Kijun-sen. And if price breaks below the Kijun-sen, then that would be your sell signal. The steepness of the Kijun-sen line indicates the strength of the momentum, just like the Tankenson. A steep Kijun-sen line shows strong upward momentum. A Kijun-sen line that is sideways tells you that the momentum is weakening. So that goes for an uptrend and also for a downtrend. So again, the signal that price is about to consolidate is a flattening out of the Kijun-sen or the Tankenson line. So here's the chart for EDC. I would like to illustrate the dynamics of equilibrium using Kijun-sen as the baseline. So we divide the chart into 3 places. In this EDC chart, in phase 1, we see that the price is trending along the Kijun-sen line. Na magkasama yung Kijun-sen line at saka yung presyo, magkadikit sila sa number 1. So in this sense, the demand and supply are in equilibrium and the price settles into a small trading range. In phase 2, the demand surges. The result is a scarcity in supply and therefore price increases drastically. The red line or the Kijun-sen line is detached from the price. So it's way above the Kijun-sen line. In phase 3, the demand wanes out. There is a surge in supply. So the prices drop way below the Kijun-sen line. This is still in a state of disequilibrium. So what follows should be a consolidation phase. And during this consolidation, the price and Kijun-sen rejoin so that demand and supply are in equilibrium. So this is sort of like a cycle. We go back after number 3, we go back to number 1, we go to number 2, and then number 3 once again. Let's talk about the Chico Span. The Chico Span is one of the most underutilized yet more important aspects of the Ichimoku system. It is time shifted because from the current closing price, you count 26 periods back to get the latest point on the line. This helps us get a clear picture of current price action with respect to the past 26 periods. So the Chico Span helps to determine the direction of the trend in the future with respect to its past. Like they say, how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? Here's an illustration using the MRP chart. This is the current period. We count 26 periods back, and that time period or that price is plotted on the Chico Span line. So where is the Chico Span? Is it above or below the price? It's below the price. So simply, if the Chico Span is below the price, then that would indicate that there is potential for more bearish action to come because price tends to follow trends. So MRP is currently bearish because the Chico Span is below the price. So most often, we'd rather look at the Chico Span. Well, I'd rather look at the Chico Span rather than the price because it gives you a perspective as to where the prices are in relation to its past. The Chico Span also tells you whether price is about to shift directions. If you see the Chico Span pointing down, then you know it's going to consolidate. If the Chico Span starts to point up, you know it's going to resume its uptrend. Here's the bullish scenario. Here's the current price. And this is the price 26 periods ago. And that line is, that price is plotted on the Chico Span. So you know that RWM is bullish because Chico Span is above the price. That means that there's a higher probability for more bullish price action to follow, especially since the Chico Span had pointed up. Another function of the Chico Span is to define ranges. So here are the Chico Span tops and bottoms. This is the area, these are the areas where Chico Span made reversals. Again, these are just reflection of prices. I'm just showing you how we can use the Chico Span alone to determine ranges. So just connect the points of the Chico Span horizontally. You get a series of lines that lock prices within an area and where prices tend to bounce against. So basically, if we're inside these Chico Span ranges, then we know we're consolidating. And if price breaks above the Chico Span range, then we enter a new one. So for example, price is here. It is right at the support line created by the historical Chico Span highs and lows. Since price holds above the support line but Chico Span could not break above the price bars, then we know that we're in a range or we're consolidating. Let's talk about the Senko Span A. The Senko Span A is used along with the Senko Span B. Together they form the Kuhmo, or the Ichimoku cloud that is the foundation of the Ichimoku Hyo charting system. The Senko Span A is another one of those time-shifted lines that are unique to Ichimoku. So unlike Chico Span, which is plotted backwards, the Senko Span is plotted forward. So it shows you a glimpse of the future. The Senko Span A is the average of the Tankenson and Kijun-sen lines. So get the value of the Tankenson line and the value of the Kijun-sen, divide that by 2. Then we plot this value 26 time periods ahead. So in this chart, the Tankenson is 248.8. The Kijun-sen is 249.6. We add these two and then divide the sum by 2 to get the Senko Span A, which is at 249.20, and we plot that value 26 periods ahead. So the Senko Span A is also a measure of equilibrium in itself because it measures the equilibrium of Tankenson and Kijun-sen, which is also a measure of equilibrium. So it measures the equilibrium of equilibriums. So this is another way of measuring equilibrium, and it also shows you, the Senko Span A also shows you the volatility of the market. So, like I said earlier, it is an equilibrium of equilibriums. It is always found right between the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen. So the Tenkan-sen is here, the blue line. The Kijun-sen is here, the red line. And if you move 26 periods forward, the Senku A is located at the same range and in between the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen lines. So this is plotted 26 periods ahead. This is why if you count back, that value actually represents Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen 26 periods back. The same goes here. This is the Senku Span A that represents that you find in between the gap of Kijun-sen and Tenkan-sen. So it's found right between the space of the Kijun-sen and Tenkan-sen. Since price tends to respect prior support and resistance levels, then we could assume that, as Goichi Hosoda assumed, that by time shifting the Senku A line forward 26 periods, we are able to see at a glance where supports and resistances are from 26 periods ago. So this is 1 month ago on a daily chart. So we know where price and resistance levels are compared with the current price action. While it is possible to trade off the Senku Span A and B lines on their own, the real power of these two lines comes in the dynamics of their combination as a part of the Kuhmo. So let's move on to Senku Span B. The Senku Span B represents the highest high plus the lowest low divided by 2, calculated over the past 52 time periods and plotted 26 periods ahead. So this is 52 periods back from the last candlestick. So this is the last candlestick that we will consider in our highs and lows. The highest high is 263. While the lowest low is 217. So to get to Senku Span B, you add these two values, divide that by 2 to get 240. That 240 is plotted as part of the Senku B line. Now, if price hasn't made a new high or a new low for the past 52 periods, then that will be depicted in the flattening out of the Senku Span B. Since these flat Senku Spans are strong supports and resistances, then we know that prices will tend to return back to that level and use that as a reference. This is why we call that a magnet to prices. So these are flat lines. So they are magnets to price. So expect prices to bounce off that or try to use that as support level. If price is above that, if price is below that line, then a strong support had been broken and it will still try to go back to that line as resistance. So there will be a reversal of roles if this line is broken to the upside or the downside. All right, so on to our next element, the Kuhmo. This is the shaded area between the two spans, the Senku Span A and B. The location of the Senku Span A and B in the Kuhmo determines the market bias. If the Senku Span A is above the Senku Span B, the market bias is bullish and the Kuhmo is green. If the Senku B is on top of Senku A, then the market bias is bearish and the Kuhmo is red. When the Senku Span A and B cross, you get what is called a Kuhmo twist. A Kuhmo twist signals a change in sentiment. So in this area, Senko span B is above Senko span A. The Kuhmo is bearish. In the right side, the Senko span A is above Senko span B. So it is bullish. A Kuhmo twist tells you that there's a change in sentiment from bearish to bullish. So since they are plotted ahead, they define future sentiment rather than the present. Every trend starts with a Kuhmo breakout. MAC had been on an uptrend since price broke above the Kuhmo. If price is below the Kuhmo, the sentiment is bearish. Here is CHP, which had been on a downtrend since price broke below the Kuhmo. The Kuhmo identifies trading ranges. When price enters inside a thick Kuhmo, we expect a high price volatility because the distance between the Senko A and B is wide. This means price will range between these two equilibrium lines. So prices will go back and forth within that Kuhmo and has no clear direction until it breaks above or below it. The thickness of the Kuhmo defines the strength of the support and resistance. So the thicker it is, the stronger it is, and the harder it is to break out of. If price is above the thick Kuhmo, then we have a strong support. So price will have a hard time breaking below it. At most, price will try to move sideways first before breaking below it, so it will not be a drastic drop. If price is below a thick Kuhmo, then that will also serve as a strong resistance. So price will tend to move sideways before breaking above that resistance. So conversely, a thinner Kuhmo represents a weaker level of support and resistance. So if for the chart at the left, we have a very weak support, so price will be able to cut below that support line easier. At the right side, price is able to break above the thin resistance, which is the Kuhmo, quite quickly because it is very thin. This is why when prices consolidate for a longer period of time, they tend to make thicker Kuhmos. So if your stock is on an uptrend, you would like for it to consolidate once in a while in order to build a strong base and therefore a thicker Kuhmo to use as support. If price surges dramatically, the Kuhmo will tend to be weak or thin because it is not able to create a strong base, which is the basis of thick Kuhmos. Now let's talk about the Ichimoku signals. What are the signals that we could trade off and profit from? The Ichimoku Hyo gives you 5 different kinds of signals. They should never be taken in isolation, but considered in the context of the overall chart and with regard to the relationships between all of the elements, including the price. Remember that Ichimoku Hyo is useful in assessing trend strength and trend reversals. However, trends can and do change, so your readings of the charts should be taken as a probability rather than as a certainty. Signals could be classified as strong, neutral, or weak, depending on their location with respect to the Kuhmo. Signals differ in relation to their distance from the Kuhmo. So when used in a non-trending environment, for example, if the Kuhmo is flat and there's no trend or the price is inside the Kuhmo, then the signals may be confusing. So this is why we say that Ichimoku is best used in a trending environment. Here are some of the signals. The Tankenson crossover signal. It occurs when the Tankenson crosses the Kijun-sen. So here is an example of bullish crossovers using Tankenson. A bullish crossover occurs when the Tankenson crosses above the Kijun-sen. These crossovers could either be bullish or bearish. So in this example of ATN, Tankenson crosses from below to above the Kijun-sen. So there's a shift in position. The Tankenson is now above the Kijun-sen. If this happens, then you have a buy signal. A strong bullish signal is produced if the crossover happens above the Kuhmo. So kung nasa ibabaw na ng Kuhmo yung price tapos doon nag-crossover, then you have a strong bullish signal. For MAC, this happened after the crossover above 12, and then price went strongly upwards toward the 1650 area. Now, a signal is neutral if the cross happens inside the Kuhmo. This chart of IMI shows a crossover inside the Kuhmo when price closed at 14. Because the signal was neutral, prices hesitated. So when price broke above the Kuhmo, it had to retest the Kuhmo as new support once again before proceeding to a strong breakout. Unlike MAC, after the crossover, it just went strongly upwards. IMI had to retest the Kuhmo as new support before trending upwards. So from its crossover at 14, it rose to 20 levels on strong momentum within a few weeks. Now this is the chart for AGI. AGI made a weak bullish signal because the cross is below the Kuhmo. Again, just like IMI, it did not make a strong move immediately after the cross. After it went above the Kuhmo, it also retested the Kuhmo as new support before trending strongly afterwards. Unlike MAC, wherein price is already above the Kuhmo, no, it doesn't need to retest the Kuhmo as new support anymore because it's already been support for a long time. But for AGI, it just broke above the Kuhmo and has to retest it before proceeding to the strong uptrend. This is why we should prioritize strong bullish Tankenson crossovers, which happen above the Kuhmo, over other setups because it takes a shorter amount of time for prices to surge upwards. So to summarize our Tankenson bullish crossovers, a bullish crossover occurs when the Tankenson crosses from below to above the Kijun-sen. A strong bullish signal is produced if the signal happens above the Kuhmo. A neutral bullish signal is produced if the signal happens inside the Kuhmo. A weak bullish signal happens if it is produced below the Kuhmo. Now let's talk about Tankenson bearish crossovers. A bearish signal occurs when the Tankenson crosses from above to below the Kijun-sen. When this happens, sell. So this is the X chart. Right now, X is trying to do a reversal, but until, well, as long as prices are still below the Kuhmo, then it is still bearish. If we find that the Tankenson crosses above the Kijun Sen, then we have a buy signal. But right now, it's still below the Kijun Sen. A strong bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens below the Kuhmo. So with a strong bearish signal, prices are likely to continue on a strong downtrend. This was the strong bearish signal for CHP. A neutral bearish signal is produced if the signal happens inside the Kuhmo. This shows a neutral bearish signal. No, because price Tankenson crossed below the Kijun Sen inside the Kuhmo. A weak bearish signal is produced if the Tankenson crossover happens above the Kuhmo. This resulted in a weak sideways movement thereafter. So let's summarize our Tankenson bearish crossover signals. A bearish signal occurs when the Tankenson crosses from above to below the Kijun Sen. It is a strong bearish signal if the signal happens below the Kuhmo. A neutral bearish signal is produced if the signal happens inside the Kuhmo. A weak bearish signal is produced if the signal happens above the Kuhmo. Now let's talk about Kijun Sen crossovers. The Kijun Sen cross signal occurs when the price crosses the Kijun Sen line from above or below. A bullish crossover happens when the price crosses above the Kijun Sen line. So here's an example. This is a strong bullish signal. The cross happened above the Kuhmo. We have a neutral bullish signal because the cross is inside the Kuhmo. And we have a weak bullish signal because the cross is below the Kuhmo. So a bullish signal occurs when the price crosses from below to above the Kijun Sen. It is strong bullish if the cross happens above the Kuhmo. It is neutral bullish if the cross happens inside the Kuhmo. It is a weak bullish signal if it happens below the Kuhmo. Let's talk about Kijun Sen bearish crossovers. It happens when price breaks below the Kijun Sen. Now, before we talked about Tankenson breaking above or below the Kijun Sen. A Kijun Sen crossover is when it is the actual price that is breaking below or above the Kijun Sen. So these are two different signals. X made a strong bearish Kijun Sen crossover when the price went below the Kijun Sen. And it was also below the Kuhmo. NRCP made a neutral bearish Kijun Sen crossover when price went below the Kijun Sen inside the Kuhmo. FLI made a weak bearish signal when the price broke below the Kijun Sen while it is above the Kuhmo. So the price of FLI is below the Kijun Sen, but this could still bounce off the Kuhmo because it is still officially on an uptrend. So a bearish signal happens when price crosses from above to below the Kijun Sen. A strong bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens below the Kuhmo. A neutral bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens inside the Kuhmo. And a weak bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens above the Kuhmo. Now let's talk about Chico Span crossovers. It occurs when the Chico Span rises above or falls below the price. A bullish signal occurs when the Chico Span crosses above the price. A bearish signal occurs when the Chico Span crosses below the price. A strong bullish signal happens if the Chico Span crosses above the price while the current price is above the Kuhmo. IMI shows that strong bullish signal. Strong signals give you a higher likelihood of a successful breakout because there's no Kuhmo stopping the price. A neutral bullish signal happens if the price is inside the Kuhmo. As this example in PhilWeb, the Chico Span crosses above the price while the current price is above the Kuhmo. So if you look at the Chico Span, it went above the prices in the past, but the current price is inside the Kuhmo. Ito yung past, ito yung Chico Span. It went above the price, but the current price is inside the Kuhmo. So 26 periods forward, the price is inside the Kuhmo. Therefore, it is a neutral bullish signal. So we're not talking about the area of the price when the Chico Span cross, but the price 26 periods forward. P-Core made a weak bullish signal when Chico Span crossed above the price while the price was below the Kuhmo. A strong bearish signal happens if the Chico Span crosses below the price. So you see, while the price is also below the Kuhmo. So we've used X several times. There was a Tankenson crossover, a Kuhmo breakdown, or a cross of price below the Kuhmo, a Chico Span crossover in many instances. The elements have already told us that X would be bearish and it will be up for a strong downtrend early on in the downtrend. So price is below the Kuhmo. This was a strong bearish signal because the Chico Span crossed below the price while the price 26 periods forward is already below the Kuhmo. So wala nang strong support from the Kuhmo. That's why it resulted in a strong downtrend afterwards. Kasi nasa ilalim na nga siya ng Kuhmo, nag-bearish crossover pa. So a neutral bearish signal is produced if the price is inside the Kuhmo when the Chico Span crossover happened. So this is a Chico Span crossover. It crossed below the price and 26 periods forward, the price is inside the Kuhmo. So this is a neutral signal. Now it's a weak bearish signal if Chico Span breaks below the price while the price 26 periods forward is still above the Kuhmo. So may support pang aasahan yung price kahit na nag-bearish crossover yung Chico Span. But currently VLL is already bullish because as you see, price is already above the Kuhmo. We're talking about this particular time frame right here. But since Kuhmo already crossed above the price and is pointing upward, then it is already bullish. Let's talk about Kuhmo breakouts. It happens when price crosses above or below the Kuhmo. A bullish Kuhmo breakout occurs if price breaks above the Kuhmo. A bearish Kuhmo breakout occurs if price breaks below the Kuhmo. Here's an example for PXP. Here are the conditions for a successful breakout. Number 1, price breaks above the Kuhmo with a single candle. Number 2, price closes above the Jensen. Number 3, there's a bullish Kuhmo twist in the future. Number 4, the Chico Span is above the price. Number 5, there's a Tankenson bullish crossover. So this is considered a bullish Kuhmo breakout because all these 5 elements are present. Now the opposite is a bearish Kuhmo breakout. So this is a successful bearish Kuhmo breakout. We'll use the chart for DNL. First, price breaks below the Kuhmo with the single candlestick. Second, there's a price cross below the Kijun Sen. Third, there's a bearish Kuhmo twist. Wait a minute, I have to correct this. I'm sorry about this. This bearish Kuhmo twist should be here because this is plotted forward. The fifth is a Tankenson bearish crossover. So this is a successful bearish Kuhmo breakout, which led to prices dropping strongly for DNL. I moved the number 4 to the right because Kuhmos are formed 26 periods ahead, right? So it was wrong to put it there. This was the actual Kuhmo that denoted the price action 26 periods earlier. So you see all these elements warning you already while prices were still at high levels that DNL will go to a strong downtrend. Now, a Kuhmo twist occurs when Senko span A and B change positions. So this signals a change in sentiment. So this shows a change in sentiment from bearish to bullish. Let's go back. Because the Senko A went above the Senko B. Correspondingly, AGI also made a change in trend from downtrend to uptrend. This shows a bearish Kuhmo twist which warned that SMC would go on a downtrend 26 periods ahead. Now let's go to a case study on MRP. To show how we used all these elements together to find the trend and the future price action of MRP. Now, let's take, for example, let's imagine that we are back in July 2016. This was right at the start of the consolidation phase 4, or the consolidation box for then called MCP, which is now MRP. Now, so this was MCP way back in July 2016. You're not yet an Ichimoku user at that time. So your chart would probably have looked like this. You had candlesticks, you had the RSI and MACD, you also had moving averages. In July 2016, you bought MCP or MRP at this point because you saw that price was going up. It had been making higher highs and higher lows. Then on the following days, price stopped going up and started to move sideways. You realize that you are stuck in this consolidation box. You have no idea where MCP will be going in the short term or medium term future. The moving averages gave 3 bullish signals. Right here, you see that the green went above the yellow and the red. Here's the first bullish signal, and then the second, and then the third. So 3 times it gave you buy signals. Each time that buy signal happened, you thought that this is probably it. it will finally resume its trend and I will be able to get out of this trade. Sadly, prices remained sideways for the next 7 months. The RSI also remained range-bound. The question on your mind was, when will I be able to get out of this trade? Until when do I have to hold this piece of baggage? Finally, after the long wait, MCP made a bullish crossover once again. And at number 4, you assume that this will again be a false signal, so you took it as an opportunity to sell at break even. After selling, you felt a sense of relief that you were able to get out at minimal or no losses. However, you see that there's a possibility that this is also a real breakout. But you hesitate to buy back because you look at the RSI and the RSI had not broken out yet. The MACD gave conflicting signals. There wasn't a strong deviation from the signal lines. It seemed flat and it moved in and out. So you were probably whipsawed. You are not sure whether to enter the trade, so you just let it go. In this confusion, MCP easily made its way from 450 to its high above 10 pesos. However, a bearish divergence also showed itself from 8 pesos to 10 pesos. And price had corrected back down since. The chart that we use with traditional indicators and moving averages, while could be also effective, was not able to convince us to get into the trade because they had conflicting signals. And we did not know which signals were more reliable. They showed current movement but could not tell us about the future sentiment of MCP. Let's look at the MCP chart using Ichimoku. Things could have gone differently if you had known how to use Ichimoku charts way before you made those decisions. And if you'd known how to use the different Ichimoku elements back then. Now let's go back to number 1. This was the trading range. You bought shares inside this box. But Chico Span made lower highs and told you that the current trend is sideways. As you can see, Chico Span had made lower highs. It trended downward and then went inside the price. So you know that no breakout is happening anytime soon because the Chico Span went inside the prices. You sold here, but the Chico Span already made higher highs, and it could have told you that this is a real breakout because it went above the previous high of the previous Chico Span. To add to that, there's a Tankenson crossover and it happened above the Kuhmo. So it could have told you that this is a strong bullish signal. You hesitated to buy here. But the Kuhmo twist could have told you that it's all right to buy because the sentiment is now bullish. The Kuhmo had turned from red to green and is more likely to go upward than to go back to a sideways mode. You hesitated to enter from here all the way to 10 pesos. However, if you looked at the Kijun Sen, it could have told you that it is supporting the price. The medium trend was bullish. And every time prices went back to the Kijun Sen, it gave you an opportunity to buy. On top of that, the Kuhmo was a thick one, showing strong support for the uptrend. So had you known how to use Ichimoku from this time, you would have avoided all the drama that came with not knowing that the market what the market would do because Ichimoku is able to provide you with an analysis of price action with regards to past, present, and future direction. So Ichimoku elements tell you the current trend, which was sideways in this area. The Chico Span told you that it is in a range because it is trending below prices and only broke out when Chico Span made higher highs. It also tells you the trigger for the change in trend, which is a break above the Chico Span resistance, and the likely timing of the future trend. So the trigger is the Chico Span breakout and the Tankenson Kijun-sen crossover. The timing was showed to you by the Kuhmo. So by timing, when you see that Kuhmo twist happened here at number 3, the price also started trending above the green Kuhmo. So this signals the start of the trend. The Kuhmo twist signals the start of the bullish sentiment or the start of the trend. The fourth, Ichimoku also told you the strength of the trend that followed because prices trended above the Kijun-sen line. We know that it is medium-term bullish and is supported by a thick Kuhmo and therefore a strong uptrend. Now let's dig deeper into the signals that led us to believe that MRP or MCP would strongly trend as it did for the past few months. So I drew the box only to show you which part of the trend we talked about in the previous slide. However, for Ichimoku, our ranges are defined by the Chico Span. So price had been consolidating above the Kuhmo. The Chico Span told us that it was in a sideways mode because Chico Span could not go above prices. It had been moving in and out of prices. Then Chico Span broke above the range here. Now again, the Chico Span represents prices but plotted 26 periods back. So at this Chico Span breakout, which candlestick was actually responsible for the breakout? It was this candlestick, counting 26 periods forward. Now this twist tells you that the trend was about to begin. From bearish sentiment to bullish sentiment. So the Kuhmo shows up before the prices do, before the prices break out. It already made the twist even before the breakout happened. So you know that there's a higher likelihood that the breakout will happen because the twist already happened 26 periods ahead. So that is the beauty of the Kuhmo twist or the Kuhmo. Now let's do another case study on PNX. I'd like to show you the conditions for a successful breakout that we also found in PNX. First, there was a Tankenson crossover. There's a Kijun-sen crossover. And then there's a Chico Span crossover. A Kuhmo breakout. A Kuhmo twist. Notice that while prices were still at its lows at 585, the Kuhmo twist already warned us of a change in sentiment. So you would have been able to speculate on this because all 5 signals were present on the chart. So this was where the Kuhmo twist happened. If you count 26 periods back, you would have been able to buy PNX at around 585 because we were already warned by the Kuhmo that this is going up. So it made a strong run up, but met resistance at these areas. After the strong run up to 7, it consolidated, and it was stuck between a range. You would also find that consolidation because the Chico Span also made sideways movements. Then it broke above 7. Chico Span also broke above the price, as price broke above the range. Note that breakouts often happen after price touches the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen lines. So like we said, right? When Kijun-sen and Tenkan-sen are able to find equilibrium, that will be a strong bounce point. Remember the cycle? Equilibrium, and then this equilibrium once again, then equilibrium once again, and this equilibrium once again. So every time the Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen come together, fireworks happen. Price will tend to bounce off that level because it's a double support already, and then a breakout is likely to happen. We're talking about an uptrend here, but if you find a Kijun-sen and Tenkan-sen and you're in a downtrend and the Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen are above the price, then you will expect resistance at that area. But right here, since it's in an uptrend, this confluence between Tenkan and Kijun serves as a strong bounce-off point for a future breakout. So that's exactly what happened. There was a breakout. And this is the succeeding set of breakouts that happened to PNX. This was the area we were talking about earlier. After that, we find another price range for PNX. And then a breakout happened. Notice how the breakout also happened when price and Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen are close together in the same area. A strong breakout happened. Now it resulted in a strong movement afterwards. However, the move was overextended. It was a very strong move up. And now we enter what we call a C pattern. I'll discuss this later on. But basically, a C pattern happens when there's a strong price movement and then the Tenkan-sen tends to diverge from the Kijun-sen so that we get a large gap in the shape of a letter C. The Tenkan-sen is way up and the Kijun-sen is way below. So this sort of resembles a C. C patterns should be corrected. There are two ways for that to happen. Either price corrects back down via a strong price movement, or price moves sideways until the Kijun-sen is able to catch up with the Tenkan-sen. So what happened was the first. Price made a strong drop from 1150 to 950. Equilibrium was restored as Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen closed the huge gap. Now remember the example on ETC? There's an equilibrium and then this equilibrium. Then the next part of the cycle is an equilibrium once again. So price bounced slightly right here. And equilibrium is restored in this area because the gap closed already for the Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen. However, price dropped once again and it formed another C pattern. After that consolidation, price went up again to restore the equilibrium between Kijun-sen and Tenkan-sen. Notice how Kijun and Tenkan in this area are now together again. And prices also bounced above that confluence between the Tankenson and Kijun-sen, which resulted in another breakout. So this was a strong base to break out of, and PNX made another strong breakout. Now let's go to everybody's favorite, PXP. In my previous webinar, I showed how PXP gave these signals way before when it was the previous cycle, from 1 peso to 6 pesos. PNX made that same cycle all over again. Excuse me. I'm sorry, PNX only continued with that cycle, not made that cycle all over. It continued with that cycle. So this was what I'm talking about previously. PXP from 1 peso rose up to 6 pesos and then made a new cycle. It went back down below the Kuhmo again and then made another breakout above the Kuhmo. Note that the order in which the signals occur is not important. In this chart of PXP, you find the Kuhmo twist right here. This happened when the Kuhmo broke above 350, and when the price broke above 350. So there's a Kuhmo twist, price breakup above 350, and then the Chico Span breakout above the price. The Kijun-sen crossed above the price, and the Tankenson crossed above the Kijun-sen. So price rose from about 350 at Kuhmo breakout to 995 in a few weeks, or even 10 pesos. I think the high was 1010. It also made successive breakouts. Now, if you compare this chart to IMIs or MAC, PXP's move was too strong that the Tankenson and Kijun-sen were not able to catch up to each other during its run. The Tankenson made the solo, prices bounced off Tankenson many times and made breakouts without waiting for the Kijun-sen. Because of this, the resulting consolidation for PXP was quite drastic. So hindi na siya hinintay yung equilibrium at different breakout points. That's why at the end of the run, it dropped drastically. And look at this area here. It is now trying to restore equilibrium because it made a C pattern right here. Right here, it made a C pattern. It did not close the gap here. Dire-diretso siya. Made a C pattern right here. So it is trying to restore equilibrium by trying to go back to the Kijun-sen line. So essentially, this is supposed to be, prices already closed that line at 7 pesos. Remember, it even went to 650. I think I made this chart on October 2. Yeah, October 2. So this was the target for the C pattern. No, it already reached 7 pesos. And then it made a slight bounce. It's now consolidating inside this range between the Tankenson and the Kijun-sen. So when prices escape like that without restoring equilibrium, it will happen eventually. It cannot keep going up forever. So it's suffering the consequences of its impulsiveness previously. So there's another breakout here. Now let's go to IMI. The uptrend for IMI is still in progress because there's no, it had not broken below the Kuhmo yet. While it's showing some weakness, it had not broken below the Kuhmo yet. So what are the signs? At the start of its run, it made the Kuhmo twist. And then a Kuhmo breakout. A Chico Span crossover where price went above, Chico Span went above the price. There's a Chico Span crossover, a Jensen crossover, sorry, and the Tankenson crossover. The Kuhmo twist happened when IMI was at 625. After these prices trended above the Tankenson and Kijun-sen lines, and this breakout happened above 7 pesos. And thereafter, there were other successive breakouts as well. This is the same chart for IMI. I'd like to show you the successive breakouts. So here's another breakout. It broke above 10 pesos, 13.50, 15 pesos. IMI is currently hovering above the 19 peso level. Notice how the same thing happened to IMI. Look at what happened to PXP. IMI also made a strong run. Without strong consolidations, Tankenson and Kijun-sen made restored equilibrium here and here, but afterwards it made strong moves upward, creating C pattern here and then here, which it did not correct immediately. This resulted in a strong downtrend. In this area, it just had to restore equilibrium because it did not restore equilibrium on this run from around 13 pesos. From 12 pesos to 16 pesos, it made a strong run without consolidating. So it had to consolidate back down to restore equilibrium. At this point, it made, after that consolidation, this was a good consolidation right here. Moved sideways. But it was still unable to restore equilibrium with the Kijun-sen. But what's good about this is that it at least restored equilibrium with the Kuhmo. This is another measure of equilibrium. Since there are two equilibrium levels at this area, which is the Kuhmo and the Tankenson, it still resulted in a Kuhmo breakout. So it's not necessarily the Tankenson or the and the Kijun-sen. It could be a consolidation between the Tankenson and the Kuhmo, which will result in a strong breakout. So strong breakout, and again, there's, what do we find here? There's another C pattern for IMI. So we're expecting IMI to make another consolidation. It did so here. And then it's still waiting to fill this gap right here, the C pattern. Sorry about that. Annie. This had been our favorite for the longest time. This is a very good case study on Ichimoku. We've been following this since it was at 4, 5, 6 pesos, and it's now at 10. Well, I actually traded this when it was a long time ago, before, when it was at below 2 peso level, and I was only able to trade it until the 4 or 5 peso and 6 peso levels, and then I did not go back to it anymore, and it went back down to 3 pesos. This was the reason why I liked this trade previously. It showed all the elements for a successful breakout. The Kuhmo twist happened at 450. There's a Kuhmo breakout at number 2. A Chico Span crossover at number 3. A Jensen crossover at 4. And a Tankenson crossover at number 5. So from 450, price rose to 10 pesos in 9 months. This was a slow uptrend. Nonetheless, notice how it's been trying to restore equilibrium at every point in the breakout. Every time it breaks out, it restores equilibrium. So there was no drastic fall in prices. It moved slowly but steadily. It is a good moderate uptrend. It is a strong uptrend. It is a high quality uptrend. CPM. So you would find the common elements also. CPM, there's a Kuhmo twist, Kuhmo breakout, Chico Span crossover, Jensen crossover, Tankenson crossover. This resulted in a strong uptrend. And then successive breakout. So nakita nyo na yung formula, right? What are the elements involved? As long as price is above the Kuhmo, just keep holding it. And before it even breaks out, alam nyo na it is going to happen. It is likely to happen. So you're able to buy at the start of the trend when using Ichimoku. Hindi yung sumusunod ka lang sa prices. You're able to anticipate. Of course, you have to have confirmation from prices, but if you're there early on, you have a stronger conviction because you're able to see the price through from start, from the very start of the Kuhmo, Ichimoku signals. And you also know when it is time to consolidate. When you see C patterns, you already expect consolidation. When the Ichimoku elements come together, for example here, magkakasama dito yung Tankenson, Jensen, pati yung Kuhmo. So you expect a breakout to happen. Tatlo na yung support dito, expect a breakout to happen. Dito nag-consolidate ulit, nagsama ulit yung Tankenson at Jensen, so alam mo magpi-breakout na naman. At this area, magkasama ulit yung Tankan, Kijon, tsaka Kuhmo, so alam mo na magkaka-breakout. So as long as there are many elements or support in a certain area, which is what we call confluence, malaki yung chances na magbe-breakout. Permex, ganun din. So you might be getting tired of this, but I'd like to show you how effective these signals are. It's shown itself effective in many charts, and they always, more often than not, result in a strong uptrend. So PRMX na to, same elements, strong uptrend, di ba? So we can come up with so many examples that these formulas are very effective. DNL, the same goes for a downtrend. Ayan din. I think we showed this scenario earlier. Kuhmo twist, Kuhmo breakout, Chico Span crossover, tapos yung Jensen crossover, strong downtrend. So it goes for uptrends and downtrends. So you're able to catch or predict that most profitable part of a trend before they actually happen. So now we'll talk about how do we identify. So we'll go to trading strategies, part 4. First, how do we identify the maximum price potentials of stocks or target prices using Ichimoku? First, we have to remind you that we have many measures of equilibrium in Ichimoku. The Tankenson measures equilibrium for 9 periods, the Jensen for 26 periods, the Senko A for 26 periods, and the Senko B for 52 periods. So there are many measures of equilibrium. So what does this mean? These measures of equilibrium are supports and resistances and thus serve as price targets. The higher the time frame, the stronger the support or the resistance. So at this point in our webinar, you already know how to identify potential winners and how to assess the strength of each Ichimoku signal. Logically, those with stronger bullish signals are more likely to be successful trades than those with weaker signals. Out of so many potential trades that you might be able to identify using Ichimoku, it would be useful to know which ones are worth your time and your effort. This is the reason why we should be able to identify the maximum potential price targets. You want to be able to catch the meat of the trend and avoid selling too early. But knowing your potential selling point, you would be able to define your risk-reward ratio to determine if your trade is worthwhile. Note, however, that while we are discussing maximum price potentials, sometimes price falls short or exceed estimates by a few ticks. Therefore, price targets are possibilities and not certainties. So how do we identify price targets? We use the monthly chart. We previously discussed that prices always tend to go back to equilibrium. So we look at this MRC chart. This is the Senkou B. Price was rejected by the Senkou B line. It hit 48 and dropped back down. But note that price targets also move with price action, because previously, earlier on in the movement of MRC, I was actually looking at this as the price target. This area, which is around 66. But as price moves with time, also causes prices to move along with it. So because Senkou lines are based on price and time, right? It represents price over a certain amount of time. So as price progresses, time also progresses. So the Senkou B adjusts with time and price. So while initially the target was at 66, as time moved, the Senkou B moved back down. The area where the price and the Senkou B are able to meet would be, the closest area where they meet would be your strong resistance. So MRC hit 48 and dropped back down. The Senkou B was moving downward as price moved up. The area where the price hit the resistance, Senkou B, is also your target price. Now notice in previous movements, price was rejected by the Tankenson here in number 1. That was the initial target. So before price targets other Ichimoku element, it has to target the one closest to it, which here is a Tankenson line. And then it was rejected by the Kijun Sen. In number 3, price broke above the Chico Span A. In number 4, price retested the Chico Span A as new support. So resistance becomes support. In number 5, price broke above the Tenkan and Kijun Sen lines. In number 6, it retested that line as new support. So each Ichimoku line served as resistance on its way up. And once the Kijun Sen is broken to the upside and the Tenkan Sen is broken to the upside, we know that the next target would be the Senkus. Since the Senku A is closer, that would be the first target. And then the Senku B would be the final target or the price target. So from 48, price dropped strongly down. Right now, MRC is already supported by the Tenkan-sen line, which, like I said, is 34. As long as price is able to stay above 34 for MRC, then there's still a chance that it can break above the Senku B, because that's the next Ichimoku line that needs to be broken. So it's now between the Tankenson in the monthly chart and the Senko B in the monthly chart. So prices could range between those two lines. If price is successful and is able to break above the Senko B line, then there's no more resistance for MRC in the daily, the weekly, and the monthly charts. So this is a good stock to watch. If it breaks above 40, this was the previous high, 40. At this point na 40, it would already be above the Senko B. If it moves sideways like this, 40, wala na siyang harang. So magandang panoorin si MRC. Now this is the chart of IS. And si IS, you see that the Kijun Sen was the strong resistance to break in the monthly chart. This was at the 43 level. Price kissed that line and then dropped back down. Next we have Bell. And also showing the history of Bell. In 2014, the target price for Bell was 568. This is where we find the flat Kijun Sen line in the monthly chart. So the actual high was at 615. So after price hit 615, well, price exceeded the target, but it was unable to stay above that. So this was an overextension. Price dropped because at this point, there's no more equilibrium again, right? It's way above the equilibrium line. So price drops back down. The Kijun Sen lines were not able to support the price, not even the Kuhmo. So at this point, there's a reversal. This reversal happened in 2016. And then price broke above the Tankenson line with a long green monthly candlestick. Then it formed a flag here. It's consolidated above the Tankenson line. In 2017, price was able to break above the Tankenson and Kijun Sen resistance lines dito. Naturally, the next target was that monthly Senko B line at 470. So since wala nang ibang Ichimoku element, ang susunod mo yung pinakamalapit, which is at 470. The high was at 440. Now price dropped back down again. Right now it's hovering around the Tankenson. I think it closed at 379 last week. The Tankenson was 380, so it has to get back to 380 or else it will risk going back to the Kijun Sen line, which is at 320. It has to get back above this line soon, 380. If it does, the next target would be the flat Senko A, which is at 459. Like we said, flat Senkus are magnets to price. As long as mabutas na yung 380 at makapasok siya dun sa 420, 420 itong Senko A. Itong Senko A. Pag pumasok siya dyan, ang susunod mong target ay 460 because it is a flat Senko A, which is a strong magnet to price at 459. Again, this is all contingent on whether it is able to break those other Ichimoku lines. This is a classic example which I always use in Ichimoku. Itong si Bloom. Look how price resisted at the confluence of Tankenson and Kijun Sen at 1234. The actual high was at 1242. This was back in 2016. Price dropped back down. And then, currently, itong recent price action, the monthly chart shows the resistance here at 1211. In previous Ichimoku webinars, we already talked about this. Price was still at around the 9 peso level at that time. We noted that price could hit resistance at the 12 peso level because that is where the Senko A line is. Plus, this is a very thick Kuhmo. Therefore, this is a very strong resistance. Laking resistance ito. So, once it hits Senku A, it may correct downwards. But if you're lucky enough and the price is able to break above that, your target price is very, very high. It could reach as high as this level, the Senku B. But of course, the Senku B adjusts with prices. So the longer time it takes for price to get up to that level, the lower the target prices will be. But also, what's good about this is that the lower the resistances are. So pag lumabas na siya dito, walang Kuhmo sa ibabaw niya. Therefore, it will have an easier time going back above to its previous high. So again, everything is a function of price and time. The longer the consolidation takes, the stronger the move that follows. But if the consolidation takes a short period of time, kunyari umakat agad siya dito, matagal siya magre-range dyan sa ano na yan, sa resistance na yan, because this is a very thick Kuhmo. It could range inside this Kuhmo for a long time. But if it gets outside of that Kuhmo, there will be no more resistances above it. Pwedeng dumire-diretso na siya. So right now, it's still being hindered by the Senku A line at this area. And then prices made the drop down. Nakita mo, sinusundan niya yung Senku A line pababa. It's drifting along the Senku A line going downwards. Ang support niya would be at this blue line, the Tankenson line. This is the closest monthly support for Bloom. This blue line right here, which we find at around anong area to? Near 8 pesos. 8 or 9 pesos. 9 peso area. So the actual high was 11.94. That's a very small difference from 12.11. So you know that Ichimoku traders were probably trading this as well. Bloom, because of this setup. It's a good Ichimoku setup. Support Tankenson is now at 947. And the Kijun-sen support is at 742. So our next slide. Ito isa pa, si BSC. This is a very strong resistance. Hindi niya masira-sira to for 6 months. It had been trying to break above the Kijun-sen. This is a flat Kijun-sen. Like we said, it's a strong sign of consolidation because it's flat. It is also the target price for the monthly chart because it is a strong resistance. Notice how 6 months it's been trying to break above that. It couldn't, so it finally succumbed to selling. Now it's below the Kuhmo. Medyo bullish pa yung mga traders dito kasi it was above the Kuhmo nitong first candlestick here, close above the Kuhmo. The month after, it had been struggling. It closed below the Kuhmo. The next month after, it's inside the Kuhmo, so bullish na naman sila. The month after, bearish na naman, it's below the Kuhmo again. But all throughout, it couldn't break above 30. So it succumbed to selling and it's now bearish below the Kuhmo. This was the price target and it tried to break that many times but failed. MRP, same scenario as Bloom. It showed the price target at the Senku A at 10 pesos. After it broke above the Tankenson and Kijun-sen lines. It broke above this line, broke above this line, so yan ang natural target mo. So, let's go back to MRP, yan ang price target mo. So it hit close to that price target and then it dropped back down. Again, it's also trending below the Senku A, drifting below Senku A just like Bloom. Now it's already at support. Dito sa monthly chart, nasa Tankenson line siya, near 750. 730 to 750. So if it is able to stay above that, it will try to target 1150 levels this time. But if it breaks below that, the support will be at 550 areas, around 570, which is the Kijun-sen. So yan ang target prices. It can show you the target prices on the way up. It will also show you target prices on the way down. Target ng pagbagsak ay una ay ang Tankenson, susunod ay ang Kijun-sen. If mag-bounce yan, ang target naman yung susunod ay yung Chico Span A and then Chico Span B. So all these elements are target prices, target areas, or resistance and support areas. Next, we have brown. Classic din to. Broke above Kijun-sen as resistance, broke above Tankenson as resistance. So ang next natural target, notice in this candlestick, nauntog siya muna sa Senko A for 1 month. Nauntog siya, di yan na kayanang pumasok, it consolidated, but it stayed above Tankenson, the blue line. So since it was able to survive above the blue line for the next month, it tried to break above the Senko A. It succeeded in breaking Senko A. Target niya ngayon yung Senko B. Na target naman niya. So umabot siya sa target price, but it was not able to break above that. It just touched it. Right now, the month after, it trended above Tankenson, so it tried again. So nakita mo, ranges lang siya. It ranged between Tenkan and Kijun, Tenkan and Senku, Senku A and Kijun, ganyan yung mga Ichimoku. Pa-bounce-bounce lang siya between these different elements. It tried once again in this candlestick 2 months ago, but it failed. It broke below the Tankenson. So since it broke below the Tankenson, ang susunod niyang target ay Kijun-sen. Target niya yung Kijun-sen. Right now, it's all still above the Kijun-sen. At it tried to break below it. Nag-104 siya, then 110, last week. Closed at 1, not sure if it closed at 112, 110. But right now, the important thing is it's above the Kijun-sen. So as long as it's above, tatargetin niya ulit itong susunod na area, which is the Senku B, the Tankenson, which is at 930. Yan, so magre-range na naman siya. Para lang siyang basketball, just bounces between these Ichimoku lines. Kahit di mo na i-compute yung target prices, di ba sometimes you compute for target prices, kahit tingnan mo na lang tong lines na to, siya na nag-compute para sa'yo kung saan siya pupunta next. The reason we compute for target prices is for short-term management of trades. Kasi ito, monthly chart to. Kung gusto mag-trade na daily or weekly, then you compute for your target prices. You can also look at the daily charts in Ichimoku for that. But if you have a longer-term perspective, you look at the monthly charts and just trade in between these Ichimoku elements. Thing is, it might be too late if hindi siya nakahold sa above Tankenson or Kijun-sen. Might be too late for you to cut already because you're using higher time frames. But at least higher time frames tell you where the next strong support and resistance will be found. So it's best to use higher time frames as confirmation and then look into lower time frames like the daily chart for entry and exit, and then monthly time frames for targets and supports and resistances. So yan, target na yan. Ilang beses niyang hinit yan pero hindi niya malampasan. So your Kijun-sen support is at 110. If that holds, you'll target 130. If that breaks, you'll target 90, which is Senku A support. Next, trend following. Trend following. So how do we identify that overall trend using Ichimoku? There are 2 ways. First, the trend is up when it is above the Kuhmo. It is sideways to flat when it is inside the Kuhmo. It is down when it is below the Kuhmo. So that is how we identify the overall trend. Now, the second way of identifying the trend is identifying the strength of the trend. In an uptrend is stronger when the leading span A is rising, or the Senku span A is rising above the Senku span B, which is the leading span B, or the line at the bottom. In this case, the Kuhmo is green in an uptrend. Conversely, in a downtrend, it is stronger when the Senkou span A is below the Senkou span B. So the Senkou span A is falling below the Senkou span B. This produces a red cloud or a red Kuhmo. So this shows you the future support and resistances, both in an uptrend and in a downtrend. So in previous slide was SCC. This is Ayala Land. This is still on an uptrend because it is above the Kuhmo. EEI naman tong isa. EEI's price retracement goes below the Kijun-sen line. Price bounces off the Kuhmo before resuming uptrend. So this is still officially an uptrend, but the uptrend is lower because it's been breaking below the Tankenson and Kijun-sen lines. So there's low momentum, but it is still on an uptrend because it's above the Kuhmo. PRMX is on a strong uptrend because it is trending above the Tankenson line and has a steeper slope. A shallow retracement like this is expected of stocks with high relative strength index. Momentum traders will use the Tankenson as the support line. They buy positions at this line with the expectation that it will keep trending upward above the Tankenson. So 9-period average to, so short-term support line to. But again, this is our caution with regards to like this. At this area, Tankenson and Kijun-sen were together. It caused a breakout. Strong breakout. Here, Tankenson had not yet gone back to Kijun-sen yet, so it has to go back to restore equilibrium for another breakout. If it does not, it might result in a strong downtrend, a strong price movement downward. Parang yung nangyari sa PNX. Because the longer you stay away from Kijun-sen, the stronger the resulting price downward action might be. So it will either result in a downward price movement or a sideways movement where the Tankenson will catch up, the Kijun-sen will catch up with the Tankenson. So it's either a correction in price or a correction in time. MEG is on a moderate uptrend because price tends to go back to the Kijun-sen. So it's restoring equilibrium every now and then. The retracements are lower than that of PRMX, and the slope is more moderate. Therefore, the uptrend is not as strong. It's weak. It's a weaker uptrend, but it's still an uptrend nonetheless. And it is a more stable uptrend than PRMX because it goes back to equilibrium every now and then. It just corrected last week, wherein the Kijun-sen and the Tankenson were at the same price area at 5 pesos. So position traders will use the Kijun-sen as support line and buy area. They have wider stops because position traders are more interested in the trend than in the momentum. Di bali ng mabagal, basta uptrend. Yun yung gusto ng position traders. Momentum traders, ayaw ng mabagal, want strong uptrend, but again, it's riskier. They must be ready to sell, to press the sell button immediately once it breaks below the Tankenson because it might result in a strong downtrend like PNX. Our next lesson is lesson 3, bounce plays. This is where we will talk about the C pattern. After a strong run, the Kijun-sen and Tankenson will have a tendency to move away from each other. This means that there is disequilibrium. Now this is the Tankenson. So this is a close-up. This is the Kijun-sen. And this is what the C pattern looks like. So if you have a market like this, one of two things can happen. Price will go down to force the Tankenson and Kijun-sen to get closer, or price moves sideways until the Kijun-sen is able to catch up. This is what happens in a consolidation. This is the chart of Bell. And this is the C pattern. In Bell, we have an overextended Tankenson. This was the C pattern. Notice to the right, there's also a C. So mabe-verify may C pattern sa kaliwa kung may C din sa kanan. Because Chico Span A and Chico Span B have a huge gap between them. So the effect was the price dropped down, this candlestick right here. From this extended Tankenson, bumagsak yung presyo to the Kijun-sen. So that was your target price for the drop in price. Once the target price is met, you can expect a resumption of the uptrend. So pag bumalik lang siya, mag-uptrend ulit yan. It goes by the direction of the general trend. Kumbaga, batiin mo naman minsan yung Kijun-sen. You have to, even if you're away, you're working outside of the country, once in a while you have to call your family to tell them you're all right, right? The same like we talked about earlier, restoring equilibrium in your daily life. You're venturing outside, you go back to your roots, you say hello to your family to restore equilibrium. Then you go back out again. So ito yung C pattern ng Metro Pacific. Ang daming C patterns because this is very volatile. So this is a trader's, what people call a trader stock. This often yung mga MPI, MEG, FLI, these are stocks that traders like to trade because it's highly volatile. If you're good at indicators or trading anyway, alam mo na kung saan ang target price ito. Like this C will target this Tankenson. And then, this is on a sideways movement. So ito naman, nag-detach siya dito. Ang target naman niya itong taas na to. On the way up, ang target niya yung nasa baba. On the way down, ang target niya yung nasa taas. Ito naman, overextension siya ng pababa. So it has to go, price has to go back up. Now, price overextended on the way up again. It has to reattach to the bottom again. Bottom Kijun-sen. And at every C pattern, there's also a corresponding C pattern in the Kuhmo. So that you know that there's really an overextended price move. In this chart of Bloomberry, we also find that the Tankenson is way above the Kijun-sen in this area, no? Sobrang bilis ng movement. Nasa baba pa yung Kijun-sen, made the C pattern. So nag-target price siya. On the way down, yan ang target price niya. Tapos nag-bounce back siya afterwards. Nung bounce niya dito, ito, nag-range naman siya between Tenkan and Kijun. Parang maliit na C din to. Itong pattern na to. It overextended this bounce here. So baka bumaba na naman siya. It's just gonna range until it breaks above either one of those lines or below. MCP. Ito din. Overextended yung pagbagsak niya. So we might expect a bounce from MCP. Ito yung C. Pwede niyang i-target itong area na to naman. To restore equilibrium. So what are our potential bullish setups? So these are, again, these are probabilities, not certainties, okay? Pag hindi natuloy, don't shoot the messenger. Yan. So you have Manila Jockey Club. Obvious na favorite ko to. Because it satisfied, the conditions for, ito, nag-break out yung Chico Span, Tankenson crossover, Kuhmo twist, dito diba, Kuhmo twist, Kijun-sen crossover, price broke above Kijun-sen right here, this candlestick here. Tapos yung Kuhmo niya paakyat. Ito parang Hindi siya nag-see actually dito kasi hindi naman umakit yung Tankenson eh. Ang umakit lang yung price. Hindi sumama yung Tankenson. Because Tankenson is an average over the past 9 periods, right? Eh yung low ng Tankenson mo, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, nandito pa sa area na to. Near 2 pesos pa ang 2, what price is this? Hindi ko makita at napakaliit. 230 levels. Nandito pa yung low mo at nandito yung high mo. So, in-average siya ngayon 325 tsaka itong 230 area. Nandito pa. So, as long as it does not make higher highs and higher lows, hindi pa siya aakyat. So, if MJC makes a higher high over the next 9 days or a higher low, magte-trend up na si Tankenson. So, right now, ang maganda dito, may equilibrium pa sila kasi magkadikit pa sila, di ba? There's no overextension, so hindi ma-expect na mahulog to kasi may equilibrium pa. I just like this because of the way that it broke out and it's currently consolidating in this way na mabagal lang. Hindi maganda yung strong surge. It's taking its time. FGen. I think FGen dropped in price but it's still above the Kuhmo. Maganda dito kasi ito Chico Tankenson crossover, Kijun-sen crossover here. Price went above Kijun-sen. Kuhmo breakout. Price Tankenson is above Kijun-sen. Although may din siya, may overextension din siya. I think that's why last week it dropped back down kasi overextended din yung Tankenson niya. But overall, this is still an uptrend. Itong resistance niya, if you look at the Chico Span, itong una niyang tatahaking resistance which is near 2020. Mga 20, where's 20 pesos is here? Anong value to? Near 2020. So, pwedeng mauntog dyan ang FGen kung magtuloy siya ng uptrend. But right now, it's still above the Kuhmo, therefore, officially on an uptrend. Filinvest din. Chico Span is free. Crossover dito. Kijun-sen crossover dito. Tapos, hindi masyadong magkalayo ang Tankenson at Kijun-sen, and Tankenson is still above the Kijun-sen. So, walang resistance. Pataas pa yung turo ng Filinvest. But I think last week, I think it corrected to around 206. As long as it's above 204, still okay. Because this is Kijun-sen. Kung bumaba siya below 204, next support mo is your Kuhmo. RFM. This also took its time. Chico Span breakout here. Crossover. Kuhmo breakout. It's supported now by the Kuhmo. And there's also a Kuhmo twist. Dito. Nagiging green na yung Kuhmo niya. So, but notice that this is a flat Senko B. So, it could still retest this as you support. Pwede pa siyang, kasi may resistance ka dito si si RFM sa 460, itong resistance ng Chico Span. Kung gumalaw ang oras, tapos hindi pa siya umaabot dito, bababa na yung resistance niya, magiging 458 areas. As time goes by, the resistance is weakened. Diba kasi kunyari, maraming sellers, ang daming ipit dito sa 4 pesos, sa 5 pesos kunyari. Daming ipit dyan. Habang tumatagal, madaming naiinip, nagkating losses. So the resistance has become weaker as prices go up because people are able to, long-term holders na naipit na matagal are able to get out one by one or little by little. So, as long as there's strong buying, the buyers will eventually eat up the shares of the sellers at the resistance area. So itong si RFM is showing a good uptrend, but there's still possibility that this will be met as support. Pwede pang bumaba dito. But as it moves along, kung umaakyat din ang Kuhmo niya dito, yun ang magiging support niya. So you need time for RFM to make us that more consistent uptrend, more consistent trend. FNI also made the same crossovers, and right now is still above the Tankenson line, which is also a good sign. It is also above a bullish Kuhmo. So ito yung mga beginnings of an uptrend. Itong Kuhmo niya, hindi flat, kundi paakyat na. So kung susunod siya sa Kuhmo, edi uptrend na yan all the way. Because ang kapal pa ng support ng Kuhmo dito. Ano pa? Apollo Global. Itong si Apple. This also made a strong breakout. Tapos may Kuhmo twist din dito. Dito, at this point, in equilibrium pa yung ano niya, Kuhmo and Tenkan. Maybe we can look at Tenkan and Kijun. We can look later kung nag-C pattern na siya. If so, it has to correct back down. LMG. Ito. Kailan ba ito? October 7? Yeah, I made this kaninang umaga lang yata. So this is also showing a strong uptrend kasi pataas yung Kuhmo. If you notice yung FNI, di ba? Nandito yung FNI nung yung kanina, parang ganito itsura ng FNI. Itong si Apollo, si LMG pala, from that point on made a strong uptrend. So yung mga pinakita natin kanina, nandito sila. CPM, ayan, ito rin. Showed this earlier as well. Again, ito yung Kuhmo twist to. Kung hindi ka pa believer ng time na to, you might have waited for a consolidation. Siguro naman by this time, believer ka na kasi ang kapal na ng Kuhmo. You don't have to get in too early. You can wait for confirmation. Like this, confirmation na to kasi tatlo na yung support at this area. Hindi ka pa ba convinced? Tankenson, Kijun, tsaka Kuhmo, nandito na lahat. There's less likely na malulugi ka because there's strong support at this area. Kasi dito, pwedeng hindi ka pa convinced dahil ang nipis pa ng Kuhmo, tapos may flat Kuhmo dito, pwede pang bumaba, tapos the trend can still reverse, diba? Kung hindi maging successful to, bababa siya dito, tapos mag-sideways na naman. So, some people just wait for strong confirmation. Ito na yun. This would be your strong confirmation. If you're not an early follower, like the people here who have more guts to enter the trade. But if you're an Ichimoku practitioner, you'd have all the signals you need dito pa lang. Sigurado ka na, di ba? What else? Robinson's Retail. I hardly trade this. I never traded this. But nonetheless, it's showing a good trend. Ito, notice the C pattern here. Nangyari sa kanya, ganun din. Nag-C. Bumaba yung price. Drastic drop in price. From here, dito para mag-meet yung Tankenson Kijun, tapos nag-meet nga sila dito. Nag-combine sila. What's happening now? Magkasama pa rin sila. So it's still a good uptrend. But if Tankenson moves up like this area, magkaka-C pattern na naman. Magko-correct na naman siya. And look at the staircase type of movement for the Kuhmo, which is healthy because the Kuhmo is thick. I think this is the last, this pure gold is the last of my slides. Pure gold, also a strong price movement. Ito, pwede naman kasi hindi sa bottom ng price siya mag-Kuhmo twist. Dito undoubtedly, nagkaroon na siya ng signals dito sa area na ito sa baba, bago siya nag-uptrend. And magkakaroon ngayon ng reset. At this area, there's a reset kasi nasira na siya, nag-below the Kuhmo, nag-downtrend. So at this point, when you're at this area, maghihintay ka ulit ng 5 Ichimoku signals again. That will tell you mag-uptrend na ulit yan. Kasi at this point, officially on a downtrend siya, no? So ano yung 5 signals again? Dito nag-Kuhmo. Tankenson crossover dito. Kijun-san crossover sa big candlestick na to. Chico Span crossover dito. Kuhmo twist dito. Tapos nag-uptrend. So yung mga signals na yan, they don't only happen at the bottom. Siyempre may signal doon. Pag nasira yung trend, hahanap ka ng bagong signals ulit in the middle of the trend to confirm na tutuloy ang pag-akyat. So you can find signals in the middle of the trend. So I think that's my last chart. Meron pa isa. PSE. Ito rin. Trend ng Philippine Stock Exchange. It had always been on an uptrend since that bottom. Ito, never naman siya nabutas. Never naman siya nag-below Kuhmo, no? Nobody trades the PSE. Nobody trades the PSE index, but it shows you an overall direction of the market. Ito yung time na ang tagal niya nag-hesitate, this area. Remember, ito yung may tatlong tops, triple tops, hindi alam ng mga tao kasi ang nipis ng Kuhmo dito, so hindi mo alam kung mag-hold yan. Luckily, it was able to hold and made new highs. So this was actually a life or death situation kasi nandito na lahat ng support tas ang nipis ng Kuhmo. So it could have gone down, but it didn't. So ang confirmation mo na nangyari to is nung Chico Span broke above the price at this area, yun ay confirmation mo na pataas na to. No more threat of the triple top at this area nung Chico Span went above the price. So important yung Chico Span talaga, especially when working in ranges. So this is the first part of our Ichimoku webinar. We finished right exactly at, well, 2 minutes ahead of time. So we have a few minutes if you'd like to clarify some things. So next week, we'll discuss using Ichimoku with other indicators. So do you have any questions? Yes, this is recorded. Tapos, choppy and delayed ba, James? Ay, display. I'm looking at it at the same. Actually, I'm logged into the webinar. It is recorded anyway, James, but on my monitor, yung receiver screen ko, parang delayed by half a second, ganon. Not that delayed. Nonetheless, tingnan natin sa recording. Yes, it's recorded, so I'll give you the recording. So, do you have any, no delay? I think baka sa ano yun, depende sa location. So, if there are no more questions, pwede rin naman akong, you can ask me questions during Discord trading time on the side kung ayaw nyo magtanong dito. So, no more questions? Confirmed? Okay, so kung wala kayong questions, thanks, Bindoy. The recorded, upload ko yung recording. The link will only be available to you as the people who actually attended the webinar. So it's not for sharing. So, wala na. Naku, habang usapan yan, Bindoy. Okay, so thank you very much and thank you for your funding, Bindoy. I'll see you next week. Just message me for anything. I hope you learned something from today. So have a great lunch. Let's see you next week and during the trading next week. So see you and bye. Thank you very much for attending.